Yet Israel, the repeated victim of aggression, faces the brunt of Human Rights Watch's criticism. Bernstein goes on to say, to be sure, even victims of aggression are bound by the laws of war and must do their utmost to minimize civilian casualties. Nevertheless, there's a difference between wrongs committed in self-defense and those perpetrated intentionally. Those are the words of Robert Bernstein criticizing his own group, Human Rights Watch. Your response, Amira Hass.
It's very Orwellian, very Orwellian. It's Israel which attacks the Palestinians. I mean, I read the article. The word occupation does not appear there even one time. He says that Israel is a democracy of 7 million point something Israeli citizens. He forgets 4 million Palestinians who have to be registered in the Israeli population registry in order to exist. All the Palestinians are registered. He forgot the 4 million. So what kind of democracy it is where 4 million who are in the Israeli Ministry of Interior have to be registered, and Israel decides if they exist? How can you call it a democracy when when 1/3, not to mention the 1 million Israeli Palestinians, don't have rights, the same rights? What kind of democracy it is? It is really twisting all facts around. I was surprised to read this article because it very much sounded, much of it sounded like propaganda of Israeli officials, parts of it, not all. Also, it's true that Human Rights Watch was established back in the 70s and 70s as part of the human rights discourse against the Soviet Union or against the East and unopened societies, as he calls it. But things have changed since then. And it doesn't mean that if it was recruited in the Cold War, it was not justified to criticize those societies for lack of democracy. But now we have developed, we know that attacks on democracy cannot, and on rights do not only happen in the closed societies and in the unopened societies. And we also have learned that we should come with more demands to societies which claim to be democratic. Every American Jew has more rights in Israel, potentially has more rights in Israel than any Palestinian who was born there, who lives there, or who was born to Palestinians who were expelled. Every American Jew. I mean, this gives an obligation to Human Rights Watch to monitor Israel. I mean, there are no Americans who have a potential right to become automatically Saudi citizens or Chinese or I don't know what. Only Israel. So you have an obligation to monitor to what extent it protects or abides by internationally accepted obligations and human rights. So these things are completely forgotten, and many more. I mean, it's factually. I mean, there are many things to argue with him, I think, and also value-wise, many things to argue, and maybe I'm sure that people will answer.
And finally, Amira, can you comment on your vision of the future in Israel and the West Bank and Gaza? And there's murmurs in the press of a third intifada. What's your view from living in Ramallah?
You know, Israeli journalists who are connected to the military always talk about the third intifada like the broadcaster, weather broadcast, you know, like, okay, there is some clouds, there will be rain, there will be no rain, completely devoid of any real sociological analysis, not to mention analysis of which is based on the analysis, which is based on understanding of what occupation is and what oppression is. This is, I think, almost a nature law, that when you have oppression, sooner or later there will be explosion against this oppression. Will it be successful? Will it be clever? Will it be intelligent? Will it be stupid? We don't know. The second intifada was a disaster. was a disaster for many reasons, and we don't have the time. But the main reason is that it was a reflection of people's anger with this discrepancy, terrible discrepancy between the official language and the reality of no rights, of and by the way, economically wise, it was good. It was not bad. It was not for strict economical reasons, but it was for this: you are promised liberty, you are promised freedom, you are promised a state, you are promised independence, and what you get are Bantustans and growing Israeli settlements and disconnecting Gaza from the West Bank. So there was an explosion. But then, for internal reasons, there was the militarization of this uprising, used by Arafat in order to hush criticism against Arafat, escalated by Israeli excessive use of power, lethal power to disperse demonstrations that were very benign before the shooting to the air. And then Hamas used this and others to show that they are for their internal Palestinian struggle, a competition over popularity. So they were competing over who can kill more Jews. So this for me was a very a big failure. But the uprising started for genuine reasons, and so will the next uprising. Because this discrepancy, this Israeli control over every step of Palestinian life still goes on, and it's even worse, and the world doesn't know. People do not associate now the Israeli regime with the terrible restrictions on freedom of movement, like it was in South Africa. Everybody knew during South Africa, during apartheid, that there is a pass system. Now people do not know about. I was asked by a very nice Jewish woman, close to Peace Now. She asked me, are there any Palestinian journalists doing like what you are doing, living in Israel and reporting about Israel? I said, they wish they could, but Israel would not allow them even to go and cover a press conference in Jerusalem, let alone live in Israel. We mean Palestinians who are residents of the West Bank or Gaza. She was surprised. So people do not grasp the extent of the restrictions on movement, which is the worst of all. I mean, it completely shrinks people's life. Not to mention how Gaza is a huge, how would I say, detention camp for 1.5 million people who could not move more than 30 kilometers or 40 kilometers in the past 10 years or 12 years.
Amira Hass, we want to thank you very much for being with us. Amira Hass, regular columnist with the Israeli newspaper Haaretz, just won the 2009 Lifetime Achievement Award from the International Women's Media Foundation. Her last book is about her mother, who survived a Nazi concentration camp and moved to Israel. Her book is called Diary of Bergen-Belsen, 1944 to 1945, written actually by Amira's mother. And that does it for this segment of the show. Thank you, Amira.
Thank you.
We'll be back in a minute.
Thank you.